Diane and Adam, we're talking about the Declaration of Independence, which we read in Torrey regularly. And of course, we treat it as a historical document, but we don't do a history lesson on it. We handle it as a statement of philosophical, political truth. I want to ask a question about it. Looking back on it, of course, we are Americans, and we look back through the Constitution to the 1776 Declaration. But I'm always struck by what it must have been to sign that document when you didn't know what kind of government was coming. So I want to ask if how great is the Declaration of Independence if it's a blank check for some government, the details of which will be provided at a later date, several years later?
So two thoughts come to mind. One is it's scary and it's a risk.
It's a blank check.
Yeah. And and if I have land, if I have a business, if I have things that I stand to lose and risk in this process, that's scary. On the other hand, I'm trusting that we, as in many ways as British, even though we're declaring independence, that continuity, we're going to be doing something in continuity with the lines of thought politically that give me a sense of stability. So yes, this is a blank check, but it's a blank check within a context where we're thinking as British Americans who are rebelling for pretty British reasons, for needing our representation, and that those motives are going to carry over. So blank check, but blank check within a context that gives me some assurance is where I'm leaning.
So a check that you can't overdraft in some kind of way. Well, it's significant that they pledge their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor to this thing in a way that's not given to the Constitution, that in some ways, by being open-ended in terms of the forms of government, as that's yet to be worked out with any detail, they're actually privileging maybe what's right to privilege, the ideas and the ideals that they want that whatever government will subsequently emerge have, that they want to start there, and that they're willing to put everything that a really unstable government really ruins on the line, in part because they already felt that it was on the line by a government that really proved to be no government at all to them. So in that sense, it's a blank check only because they know where their true fortunes lie, perhaps.
So there's not a lot of drama in reading the Constitution. They're not, making a big show of, partly I guess because Jefferson didn't write the text, right? There's not this histrionic sort of, we pledge our honor.
Yeah.
It's that you don't have that drama that you have in the unknown element of the Declaration.
But a blank check is a little less risky when you're already facing bankruptcy. It's like what you're not standing there as like a multimillionaire thinking, what do I stand to lose if I invest this, do this poorly?
Because most of the Declaration is like 20 or 30 things King George is doing wrong that are really intolerable.
Yeah, but you did have to sort of intensify your sense of how bad it was if you're really going to put your fortune and your life on the line for it. So he's doing all these things like, refusing their representation, making them travel large and egregious distances just to be heard, and doing that just to annoy them and make it difficult for them to communicate at all.
Long train of abuses.
Yeah. But one of the things they say about that long train of abuses is that they're designed or make you think that there is one end, which is an usurpation of, what do they call it? All design and all trained on one singular end, which is absolute rule, sort of a rule that is unfettered by law, custom, or truth.
And that's the key point. Not that we have a laundry list of things you're doing wrong, but all of these are converging on the one goal of...
Yeah. When I look at them all, I say, I think that you want to make me totally dependent on you and totally underneath an absolute rule to which I have nothing to say. And that's the thing they're most committed to.
In which I stand to lose relatively little gambling on some new political system with this heritage, but where if the alternative is lawlessness.
That makes me really worried, though, because that might say that, they're desperate men willing to gamble on anything. So then it's the worst blank check of all. I think we've gone back to taking a step back there.
Because what kind of government could follow from the Declaration? It could have been a new monarchy. It could have been 13 new countries, like the word state.
I think that seems
These
to be
colonies
the
should be
most
states.
possible,
A little Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
we are
big-
and our
bigger
right ought to
Europe.
be free and independent states.
Yeah, an 18th century state was a broad enough meaning that it could have meant country.
Yeah, and ultimately, by the time they get to the Constitution, they are secure in identifying themselves as we the people. They are thinking of themselves as a unity. But you go back to the beginning of the Declaration and say, but that unity was already in the pattern of how they were thinking of themselves as the object of abuses.
Okay.
They were already, by the very preamble of the Declaration, calling themselves indirectly a people.
Yeah. Well, let me ask about that. What voice are you hearing when you hear someone begin saying, when in the course of human events, tells you this story about the course of human events? If you went out and did some good polling in the colonies, about 30% of people might have thought, let's break away. 30% would have thought, no way, it's King George forever. And a third would have said, leave me alone, I'm trying to farm. So the loudest 30% spoke for the country and described, just what is the nature of that voice we're hearing in the Declaration?
The voice of a people that feels strongly wronged. And so then it's not a positive thing forming the identity of the whole, making a people. It's a negative thing shared, and that negative experience brings them together and gives them something to be loud about.
I don't know. You see that definitely in the train of abuses section, but the tone is very lofty, right? When in the course of human events, et cetera. It's giving this kind of like dramatic picture, almost of like, this has happened before, it will happen again. When these things kind of happen, the inevitable result must be this kind of thing. So it's actually tapping into something that is almost, again, anti-circumstantial, even while it's detailing, heavily invested in detailing circumstances. It's also trying to say there's something human about this circumstance that we have seen before and that we can learn from, and that the kind of pattern that emerges is this one. It's making almost universal claims about human experience, ultimately about human rights.
That Jefferson magic voice kind of coming down from above. All the nouns are capitalized, so you think you're dealing with the Platonic forms of all these governmental possibilities.
This is a legal voice, the voice of grievance, but there's also that voice of possibility. So in that sense, it is an optimistic document. It's one that seems to be tapping into something wider than mere complaint could ever do, and using that as precisely the basis of making those complaints cement aggrieved persons into a people.
Thanks.
The Torrey Honors Institute at Biola University. Biblically centered, great books, liberal education. More at biola.edu/Torrey.